Good day. My name is Kyle Bennett. I'm a primary school science teacher at a home school in Johannesburg. Welcome to my History of Education Unit 2.3 presentation. In this presentation, we will be exploring the history of education in Africa and South Africa. Unit 2.3.1 introduces us to the history of education in Africa before, during, and after colonialism. Colonialism left behind numerous challenges for African education. It uprooted existing educational structures and replaced them with a system that was used to exploit and oppress indigenous Africans. In recent years, education has expanded dramatically in sub-Saharan Africa. An element of African education from pre-colonial times that I'm going to incorporate into my teaching practice is the organizational structure of the educational systems in some tribes. Pre-colonial African education was decentralized and learner-centered. Instruction was practical. Students learned by doing. In contrast, colonial education in Africa was centralized and teacher-centered. Colonial education stressed rote memorization and regurgitation. An empowering learning environment should be decentralized and learner-centered. Colonialism is a practice of domination that was imposed on Africa to exploit the indigenous people of that continent. An element of African education during colonialism that I'm going to incorporate into my science lessons is the scientific method. The Europeans introduced the scientific method to Africa. The scientific method is a cornerstone of Western science. It can be used to explain natural phenomena. The scientific method embraces objectivity, logic, analysis, and mathematics. In other words, it encourages critical thinking. This section investigates the history of education in South Africa, with a particular focus on current objectives in education that aim to reverse the legacy of apartheid. Since the dawn of a new democratic dispensation in 1994, the South African education system has a list of stated goals, namely democratization, decentralization, desegregation, and multicultural education. I'm going to implement elements of the South African education system in my teaching practice in the following ways. Democratization. Give learners the opportunity to choose what and or how they learn. Decentralization. Incorporate problem-posing education. Desegregation. Promote inclusivity. Multicultural education. Promote diversity. In order to overcome the legacy of apartheid education, South Africa needs both good teachers and good learners. Teachers should create learning environments that promote critical thinking and creativity. Teachers need to constantly self-reflect and improve how they teach. The outcome of good teaching should be motivated learners who recognize their own responsibilities, such as doing research and creating new knowledge. The result of good teaching and good learning should be responsible and contributing citizens of South Africa. If I were Minister of Higher Education, I would steer higher education by implementing interdisciplinary task teams. Universities should implement interdisciplinary task teams. Their objective should be to foster interdisciplinary studies through steering, facilitating certain social interactions that wouldn't normally happen. There should be greater cross-collaboration within universities and between universities to solve complex socio-economic and environmental problems, a role that is typically reserved for government. Undergraduate degrees should be awarded upon the successful completion of a cross-collaborative project. I would also promote alternatives to university. The unemployment rate currently stands at over 34%. In addition to this, there is a huge demand for skilled artisans such as plumbers and electricians. Unfortunately, trade schools do not attract sufficient students to satisfy these demands. As Minister of Higher Education, I would promote trade schools and apprenticeship programs as alternatives to university. Companies should be incentivized to offer apprenticeship training. Unit 2.3.3 gives us an opportunity to embrace a future that is informed by the past. We should critically reflect on what the purposes of education are and how we can use education to uplift disadvantaged communities. I have gained a new perspective on teaching. This unit has taught me that teaching is a surprisingly complex and dynamic profession. I have learned that teaching practices and education aims have changed throughout history. Teachers in the 21st century should constantly adapt and perfect their teaching practice. Teachers in South Africa need to be sensitive about the past. We have inherited an education system that was once used to subjugate people. The legacy of this lingers on. Teaching can and should be used as a tool for liberation. This unit has transformed my outlook on education. Informed by the past, I now have a clearer idea of what the aims and responsibilities of my future profession are. I no longer feel intimidated teaching children from disadvantaged backgrounds. I now feel that it would be an enriching experience to teach children who are culturally different to me. Apartheid left behind numerous challenges for rural and township education. I want to help solve some of these challenges. 21st century teachers need to adopt new ways of teaching. Likewise, learners need to adopt new ways of learning. Teachers need to facilitate learning by creating opportunities for learners in decision making, social skills, and problem solving. Teachers need to use a holistic approach to teaching. Learners will learn by doing. Learners will have increased autonomy. They will also teach other learners. 21st century education should embrace problem-posing education, as proposed by Paulo Freire. Thank you for taking the time to watch my presentation. Here are the references.